Hello, friends. Thank you for tuning into the Ski System podcast. We are brought to you by www.getskisystem.com, the #1 source for online strength and conditioning specific to the ski season. Not only can this website help you prepare for the season, but it can also help you maintain the strength that you've built in the off season. With over 50 plus programs and 300 exercise videos, there's no better place to go to get your training in alignment before you get on snow. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with a truly incredible person, Tom Gellie. Tom is an APSI Level 4 instructor. He's a body alignment expert, and he's honestly one of the most sought after ski coaches in the world. He's traveled around to plenty of resorts, helping them with their ski instruction, as well as assisting his clients back home in Australia and then globally via the internet. I had such a good time sitting down with him because Tom is someone who actually understands the body from a functional training standpoint. His knowledge of movement and how it applies on snow is really eye-opening. And I know that from listening to this conversation, you will walk away with new insights into how to improve your own skiing and just some things to think about when you're on snow. So without further ado, creator of Big Picture Skiing, Tom Gellie. Awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining me, man, all the way from across the world in Australia. I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast, man.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, your name kept coming up over and over when I'd ask, what guests people want to have on the podcast, and you came up as someone obviously very knowledgeable within your field. But also what drew me to really wanting to reach out and have you on here was some of the stuff that was available on the website. Like, I feel like you were thinking about ski coaching the way that trainers think about training in a really complex way, but you found a way to deliver it in an understandable way to people that maybe don't understand the complexities that are involved in coaching. And I feel like, as having been a coach for so long, like that is a very hard thing to navigate, is how do you take a really complex idea and give it in without being backhanded in your delivery to people so that they can get excited about it and understand it. So when you started all this, I mean, how did you figure out the way to deliver this type of information to people?
Well, I would say I've been kind of practicing doing that for a long time because I went to university. So after school, I went to university to study applied science and in sort of environmental tourism. So it was not really anything to do with what I'm doing now. And so I didn't really know about the body much at all. Mm-hmm. And then I became a ski instructor and really enjoyed that, and trained my eye on how to correct people and really just got into skiing myself. And then hit this point where it's like, what do I do with my life? I've met this lady I want to marry and have kids with, and being a ski instructor from Australia might not be the best career path.
Right. Your kids will thank you later.
Yeah. And so then I studied structural integration to learn about the body. And that was fantastic. And so that was in 2012. So I basically had to start learning anatomy and all these things. And so that was really interesting. And so to your question, I started out probably not being able to explain things that well, but because I was in a role, a position of already being an instructor training other instructors, I would fumble my way through and start like talking about joints and muscles. And I think that's just with everything. You have to be okay with just having a crack at it, start doing it, and but then look at your own stuff and critique it. And so then when I started putting a bit of stuff online, I would be editing the video and looking at it and going, oh, wow, like that doesn't make sense. Or a few months on, someone asks a question and they're like, and I go, wow, that's a really good question. I haven't explained what I've said before very well. I look at it and I go, okay, I need to find out a clearer way of saying this. So it's definitely an evolution. I would say I probably made things a bit too complex when I started, but I think that's just as you figuring it out. You've got this new language. You're interpreting things differently, the way you look at the body. But then as I've come along, it's good that you say it seems like things are getting simpler, because that's a real goal. And I think you can only do that when you really understand the subject matter.
Totally.
Better and better.
I feel like it's almost a note in mastery. Like when you really do understand something, and this can be for any field, that allows you, in a way, the vocabulary and the constructs to be able to give it to people in a very simple way. Because I think and I can really more so speak to the training industry and less to the ski instructor industry, but one of the biggest challenges that new trainers face, and especially intelligent new trainers that are fresh out of like a kinesiology degree or something like that, but don't really have like the hands-on experience yet of working with people, is that they're so eager to display their intelligence that they will overcomplicate simple things almost as like a value measure for the people. So it's kind of saying like, I'm worth it, And so it almost takes a more confidence in the coach or a better understanding to be comfortable in a softer delivery of information. Because that's like you get someone who's learning to ski. That is a serious undertaking, especially if someone has never done this before. They can't foresee how challenging it can be. And you become a very instrumental part in their understanding of basic concepts, how to apply pressure onto snow, how to change direction, or where to look, what to do with your shoulders or your hands. And that actually, it brings me to one of my points, because I'd like to know more about this. I didn't have access to the videos, so I couldn't see into this. But you had, I think it's a video there describing these 3 variations in like hand position or arm position and how they affect your turn. Without giving away everything, but like, what are some insights that you can provide? Because I feel like that's something that people think about all the time. It's kind of like what to do with my hands, what to do with my body. And as someone who's been skiing a long time, it's also very easy to see someone doing the wrong thing, knowing that position is pulling them back seat, or they could be forward, or so on. So what are those?
Well, I find there's 2 things with the arms. Either people are just oblivious and don't really pay attention to their arms, and if they do pay attention to them, they just keep them still. This is probably more in regards to skiing than other sports, from what I've experienced anyway. So the thing you got to, I guess, appreciate that I learned from one of my mentors about the arms, it clicked for me when he said, you want to think about your arms like your whole body is like a bag of oranges.
Yep.
And so if you throw a bag of oranges in the air, the net keeps all these different pieces together. So it goes up together, comes down together. If you spin it, all the oranges stay together. Now, say you take the dozen oranges and you don't have a net and you throw them up in the air with a spinning force on it, how do you manage the oranges go everywhere? Some go higher, some go lower, they go from different directions. So if you think about your arms now as like that, a lot of people are moving and the arms are like oranges that are outside the bag.
That makes sense. Yep.
And so if you take jumping, for example, say you jump or you throw the bag of oranges up, or maybe it's like there's 2 oranges on the outside of the bag attached with just some string. So they're kind of dangling there. So you got to throw the orange bag up, and the orange bag goes up. And then as the string finally picks up the slack and gets taut, now it's kind of getting pulled down by these 2 oranges as it's already on its way up.
Right.
So then there's this like interference force, and then it sort of equalizes a bit. And then the 2 oranges now overtake the bag as the bag's already coming down, and now it interferes again, and then you come down to earth, and
everything
the main
explodes.
bag hits, and and so you're just getting these they're like vibrations really, and interferences that are not together, they're not collectively together. And so when you see a good skier, a good athlete in anything, what is visually nice is it looks like the arms could be moving around a lot, but it's in concert, in synchronization with the rest of the body. So I think if you're the kind of skier that just keeps their arms still, they might not be interfering as much, but then also your arms might not be helping you unweight your skis. They might not be helping you pressure, all this sort of stuff. So again, because the oranges are sitting outside the bag,
Right.
and so yeah, so that's one thing that I think people are not aware of, that it's these masses, weights that you need to manage and move with the rest of the body, but also then on top of that, you can use them to influence it. So like someone that I really like looking at is Alice Robinson from New Zealand. She's sort of this up and coming GS ski superstar. And if you watch her in some of her GS turns, her arms really look like a runner. And the same movements she makes are like
arm drive.
Yeah. And like the inside arm goes backwards at the end of the turn. And like if you're an instructor, you always are told, keep your inside arm forwards.
Yeah.
She's doing exactly the opposite. But if you look at what she's doing, it's her trying to get momentum moving out of the turn across the hill, unweight the skis easily, and start the next turn really easily. And, and then some of the people that have, heard me talk about this go out and without really fully understanding, they have a go at it and it throws things off. Again, because like maybe they don't fully appreciate, they just see the arms moving, so they just throw their arms, but like the arms can really, because they're weights, you could just be as detrimental. That's why I think skiers have probably learned to keep them quiet, or been coached to keep them quiet.
It's interesting when you think about, like, I can only reflect on, being a mogul skier and how much effort we put into flatland drills with our hands straight out in front of us with our poles balanced like thumb to thumb. So we basically do like like this, and the poles are going this way. So we actually wouldn't even have our poles in our hand, because it teaches that stacked body position where your shoulders are over your hips go through the mid thigh, through the calf, and into the base of the foot. So you actually have a ton of control over your edges just based on the distance that your hands are from your body. And if you can control that on a flat ground position, then when you actually get in the moguls and you're coming out of an air and trying to slow down before you hit the first mogul without dumping all your speed and losing points, you can use this hand position drive or reduction in drive to actually change your speed. And if you look to any other sport, if you look at sprinters, if you look at soccer players, if you look at volleyball players, footballers, rugby players, and you actually only pay attention to the arms, you see a vast difference in the mechanics of what the arms actually do when the player's, like, I guess, quote, not playing. So in anticipation of a movement or as a response to a movement, the arms are going to do insanely different things from sport to sport to sport. Runners, sprinters, Olympic sprinters, they have just arm specific arm drive training that they'll do in the off season to get a better stride, because mechanically it's going to increase the way that their legs operate in a race. And when you're talking about an eighth of a second or something, if you can get that eighth of a second from improving your arm drive, then it would be in your best interest to do that. Yet
let me ask you about,
go ahead.
If you think back to the mogul, you've had a lot of experience and been coached on that. When in that mogul run, so say not like an actual competitive mogul run, when do you activate the arms maybe a bit more?
So it's been a long time since I competed, but when I think about the quantity of training we're doing in competition, the setup into an air and out of an air are obviously very important because they establish how you're going to control your speed for both of them. So if you come out of the top section real hot, you don't want to hit that jump going too fast and then your timing's off in the air. But the second you land, and you can see, just watch YouTube videos of mogul skiers landing their airs, right? The second they land, you try and like scoot your boots underneath you and then prep your pole basket. Because if your basket's prepped and in front of you, you're flexed into the front of your boots, you have all your edge control. As those hands start to drift towards you or away from you, like back to your thing about the oranges get far away from the body. it becomes exponentially harder to control your edges into moguls 1, 2, 3, 4 after a jump, which is where you either get your speed back in control or you set yourself up for like a crazy bobble.
Like what about so in hitting a jump,
mm-hmm.
the arms are pretty important, right?
They set
Especially
the
a
entire
mogul jump.
Yeah, totally.
Right, because that's a steep jump. You're transitioning. Yeah. So what are you like? I haven't been coached that much, but I was like around one day with one of my sort of junior athletes when I was coaching, and Topper, or one of the head coach of the Australian, or used to be head coach of the Australian mogul team, was there coaching some other athletes just on jumping. They were hiking the jump. And so, yeah, what do you remember, or what do you think about like doing with the arms to help a good jump?
It's so crazy. It's actually interesting how much I do remember, because it's such a instrumental part in your success, because you have 2 airs, right? So each air is worth 50% of your points for your aerials. That's a lot. So you really need to get both these dialed, one from a takeoff so that you set yourself right. But the landing is the judge's tell of, are you in control or not? And so they're almost rating like the trick as it happens, and then the trick when it lands. It's 1 score, but in a way it's like 2. And if you watch, like, I would love to have a timer and actually see on a World Cup course the time, because those guys are, I mean, they'll ski the whole run in 22 seconds. It's lightning speed to ski moguls. And if you time from the last mogul to the takeoff of the jump, it's got to be fractions of a second. So you're talking about skiing a fully stacked pole anticipating position directly to some sort of arm command. So if someone's going to go, overhead, they're going to do a back lay or a back full or double full or a cork 1080 or something like that. Sometimes they'll hit that last mogul and immediately hands just go straight up overhead, because they have to set that takeoff instantly, or use their arm positions to create rotation. If they're going to spin, they might open up a little bit more to get that balance and then set it. And the same is true for, if you watch park skiers, for example, some of them use more of like the carve off of the lip to set the takeoff, and some are really heavy in their loading, because as I'm sure you understand from like a biomechanics standpoint, that thoracic load anticipation and then hip drive when you come off is what creates all the force to do. I mean, what these guys are doing now is like, I mean, insane. It looks like they're just creating these things in a math class. Like the mechanics of these movements are nuts. But I do remember just always working on transition time from last mogul impact to get your hands in the right position as quick as possible, and having your eyes level over the top so that your body doesn't compress into the takeoff, to get a reverberation effect, because then that can buck you in, whatever trick you're going to then do. Is that something like that you work? Go ahead.
I just remember, like, with these people, these little athletes, they were juniors, so they were sort of really early stages of learning to jump a steep mogul jump. Like the arms, where they are from, like as you're approaching the takeoff, and then as you go into takeoff, like think about it as a small movement, but what are they doing? And then so now think about it, you're helping like the oranges, which are out here, that actually, as you hit the jump, like they could actually get left behind as your body gets pushed up. The ground pushes through your feet, through your legs, up your spine, your head's going off the jump. And if you're relaxed in your arms are going down still.
Right.
And then you go off, and now your arms pull down and back on you. And what do most people do when they hit a mogul jump and they're not used to it? They just blunt backwards.
There's no jump.
Backwards.
No jump
like
harder to
so
hit.
Ridiculous how forward you have to be on such a steep takeoff, right? Like that's what I remember. And now, so like back to the point about the arms, it's just an example of how much of a difference they can make, because you can send, like 14 kilos up and forward, which can almost help now manage the upper body, not, it can follow the arms in that direction.
Yeah, it's, I mean, 100%, you're spot on. It's that, if you look at a mogul hill, that it's 45 degrees or something, and then the jumps are built into the 45-degree pitch. So when you actually come over, if you're not super stacked, driving into the front of your boots like crazy with your feet pulled underneath you, you're going to almost gap the last mogul into the transition. Like you have to hit the trough, absorb, redirect everything, and square up to get both feet about hip width apart. And it would be a really fun thing to completely nerd out and like hyper analyze the transition time between the last mogul and the takeoff. But is that something that when you're working with, whether they're a virtual client or an in-person client on snow, what kind of emphasis do you put on arm position to create good body position, good edge control? What's kind of the, I guess, progression, if you will, there with someone who's new, like a new client that you've taken on?
Yeah, I would say it comes after being able to probably control some edging first. So make the ski, like that's always first. Get the ski interacting with the snow and then feeling how that works and what they can do to influence it. So it probably comes a little bit later, but a lot of the people that I work with already have sort of that ability level sort of set in. And so, yeah, the progression is first, like put some tension in the arms, which is just like now put them in the bag, right, instead of keeping them out, and then start playing with like I like thinking about arms as more ipsilaterally than contralateral. So like same side. So my left arm and left hand, how they work together, right arm, right foot, hand foot, synchronization. And so then I will work that part. So it's like, okay, what's the outside hand doing along with the outside foot, and then pressure, because that's what people can feel. You shouldn't be looking at your own body when you're skiing, but you can feel, like the main thing is pressure. Like that's the main feedback. So you got to kind of tie in movements to feelings there, and then like help people become aware of, say, the inside arm and the inside foot. You can use that like a puppet string to actually help take pressure off of it,
right?
Or influence it moving in. And and I'm just a firm believer in. I'm going to digress here quickly. Like Archie, my almost 4-year-old, learned to swim just like 3 days ago.
Awesome.
And I haven't given him, like, he hasn't done any formal lessons. Or I would say, like, his dad, who's this, obsessed coach kind of person. So I'm maybe doing, but it's kind of secret. It's like, hey, Archie, do you want to do this, play this game or whatever? But my point is, I don't really know that much about swimming, but I was trying to expose him to all the things that I think you would feel and experience in swimming. So like the sensation of the legs being able to sink and float, the upper body, your head position. So getting him to do all these things, because I know the brain is basically taking in information from the environment. So like pressure and visual stuff. And then it's assessing it and trying to figure out and give like a cause to it. So like you feel your legs sink. What caused that? Like your brain's trying to figure that out, especially if you don't want it. And so you give enough experiences and it kind of like figures out that. So with skiing and the arms, I guess I'm trying to give people these experiences, like with Archie, of like, hey, look what happens when you do this with your arm.
Right.
And then pointing like their brain to like feel the inside foot for this run and the inside arm doing this and see what happens. So now they can like tune in and go, oh, well, this happened. There's a lot of pressure on the inside ski. Do I want that? And does the inside arm have an effect on it? Like, can I regulate or change it? And so then, then that becomes like Archie just started swimming,
right.
Because he had enough information to like realize cause and effect. You just got to teach people, like, what can the arms do? What can any body part do? Because all these different parts of your body just weigh something. And as I said, we're always feeling pressure. It's the main feedback source. So move things around, feel the cause and effect, and then start letting that person become, like we were chatting before, like the autonomy starts setting in as they figure out these experiences. So I think it's yeah,
almost like if you're instructing someone to deadlift for the first time and you're trying to establish like a hip hinge position and a neutral spine position. So let's say that they're not an elite level lifter and they're going to have some degree of flexion anyway, but they're really trying to just safely take an object off the floor and get it to a standing position. And the frustration as a coach who understands that is that they don't maybe possess the proprioception yet to understand where their back even is in the first place. So someone similarly on skis, you might say, drive your hands forward. They didn't know they were back, or they don't know where is forward out to the left or is it straight. And so you do something like you take someone, you put them on their back and you say, create space underneath your back. And they give themselves an anterior tilt. You say, now take this space away. And they give themselves a posterior tilt. And you say, you don't know this, but what you just did is get your back into the right position, into this like flat back position. And they go, huh. Then you stand it back up and you go, take the space away. They push their hips down. Now do the opposite, and they go. And so you give them a roundabout way to discover this position that they can create, but they just didn't know the roadmap to get there. And so when those things happen, it's like those aha moments. You drive their hands forward and they feel their feet come underneath them for the first time. And they're like, whoa, now I have control over my ski. I didn't feel that before. And then you start to see those like things start to connect for them. When you're with a new client and you're out there on snow with them and you're working through these processes, what is the most exciting part about that with someone?
I think just seeing breakthroughs. That's the rewarding part as a coach, for sure. I used to be, I was mostly about my own skiing, but now shifting, like I'm really into getting breakthroughs with people, and that's just an addictive kind of feeling. So I guess that's one. And then just, I think, connecting with people. I know that's like a real cliche kind of thing to say, but it's true. Like I've met all these people around the world and virtually now through the site, and like I've made a lot of new friends and really learned that, like, they all actually, you know what it really is? I think it's that every new kind of person is an opportunity for you to learn something, because like I've just found, especially coming from the world of therapy, there's no real formula, I don't think. Like you hear someone come in and they say, oh, I've got pain in this part of my foot, and say 2 weeks ago you helped someone like walk out cloud nine feeling so good, and you're like, oh sweet, we got this. And so you got to watch out, because my brain goes straight into, I know how to fix this. Ego jumps in and you stop listening to this new person who has maybe what sounds to be exactly the same problem. You go in and treat it the same way as this person 2 weeks ago. And guess what? You fail and you feel bad because you didn't get the same rush of like, oh, this person's thanking you and they're really appreciative. So I think that it's just that every new person keeps you learning, keeps you on your toes, and makes you think, because you know that's what's boring about jobs is when you do the same thing over and over and it's not really stimulating.
Yeah, absolutely. So, did you feel like when would a lot of your clients that you saw privately in the therapy and training world, were they preparation for snow? Did they have any interest in skiing, or were these two separate worlds, so to speak, that you found a way to bring together?
Yeah, they're more sort of separate worlds. Like probably 95% of the people I would see in the clinic, because I'm in Sydney, it's not a huge population of skiers. They were just general, like I'd have 4-year-old kids come in. I have like 80-year-old ladies. It was a really broad spectrum. So now it's like I'm taking a break from that because of the online ski coaching stuff is really needing more of my attention. And I actually do all the helping people with their body stuff is online now. So we have this like 2 main courses really, like a body prep course, which is like a pre-season type thing, and then the academy, which is like a ski school, like online ski school type thing, or sort of just a course in learning how to ski better. And so the body prep course, which is right now we're in pre-season, we've got three groups currently going at the moment. And so that's cool. We tune in and go over different exercises. And yeah, so now I guess I'm marrying up, like there's people of different ages in those groups. And so now I'm kind of, it's a bit more of like, okay, when I'm doing physical therapy type stuff, it is pretty much just with people who are motivated to ski. And that's where I really always in the beginning, why I chose that profession, because I was like, I can put these two together. And so that keeps me in the game of, I love skiing and I want to be able to travel around the world because of skiing. So yeah, it's now to a point where it's coming more together what I really wanted it to be and why I trained in the first place to know about the body.
I guess there's 2 awesome talking points here. One of them is more the entrepreneurial side, which I'd love to come back to in a little bit, because I think it's really special that you're taking these 2 worlds you've become masters in, and you're actually creating a business where you could be anywhere in the world. You could be in Switzerland, you could be in Colorado, Utah, it doesn't matter. And you're able to not only help people all over the world with an amazing product, but also leverage your time to just enjoy life, enjoy time with your kids more, et cetera, et cetera. But as a little bit of a shameless plug to both of us is to talk a little bit about the preparation side of things, because like with the ski system, that's the whole goal, is like, I want to, like, you take my understanding of training and my years doing that on a one-on-one basis, expand that out to the thousands, millions of skiers all over the world who maybe don't yet see the value or understand that there is a value in preparing their bodies, their joints, their ligaments for the upcoming season, whether they are 1 week on snow for a ski trip, which in my eyes is almost of the more importance because your risk is higher, or if they're 60, 70 days a year person, the value that maintaining their off-season strength can be. So what are some, like, what's your outlook on that in terms of whether you are an athlete who's competing, who's looking at trying to make a national team, or you're an enthusiast who does a couple trips a year and you just want to stay healthy? Where do you see the value of training for all that spectrum of individuals?
Well, I would put it in this context. So we have to go through, or at school around the world, we're taught how to read, how to write, do math, all those sorts of things. We're not really, I mean, we do physical education, remember, at school, but it's not really about your body much. And I can even remember when I did school, I really was not interested in the like physiology and stuff like that, because it's not really applicable when you learn about cells and all that sort of stuff. Like, unless you want to become a scientist and do that, how does that relate to me? I don't care really what's going inside, because on a day-to-day basis that doesn't affect me. But how do I pick up something, run faster, not hurt myself, fix myself? Like, I think that's missing in just everyone's education. So I think really, like, I describe the way I approach it as education. So people come in and they go, I want to lose weight, or I want to this. That's not what I do. I try and educate people so they learn about their body, just like they can learn about putting words and verbs and adjectives together to make sentences so they can communicate. Well, teach them all through the body, and then they become their own. Like, you have the skills now to, like, you can write a letter to someone to complain about what's going on in your local government. Well, now you've got body skills to, like, oh, I just woke up, my leg's sore, I wonder why that is. You think about what you've done, oh, how would I fix this? What's the joint like? So my take on it is it's an education, because I think that's actually missing in society. I don't think we get taught enough applicable, usable body stuff. And I don't know what sort of stage of life is maybe better for this. You got to make it fun when you're young, but at some stage, I think, yeah, you need to teach people about that, give them some education. So that's the way I view it, because I guess, like, I don't really see other people for aches. Like, I don't really get ever any aches and pains. Like, they come like and go, but they're usually, like, I cut my foot on the fin of my surfboard, and then, now I've got a bit of pain or something, there's a tight muscle because I'm walking funny, but I understand that, and I know how to kind of fix it. And again, like, my brain can make sense of, why is there pain in my hip now?
Right.
And we're always trying to find out and make sense of it. Like, you probably resonate with people coming in. They're like, I've seen all these professionals, I don't know why I've still got this pain, and people don't know what it is. Like, that is the most frustrating thing.
So frustrating.
And sometimes people are just more happy with, at least they get given, oh, I've got some rare syndrome that's 1 in 100,000 people. Like, I think that's just one way of at least them being able to label it, and then can kind of move on. But when you don't know why something's happening or it's so frustrating.
So I'm hearing you say, like, much more on the educational side of just presenting people with, like, hey, here's some baseline human mechanical things that we do, whether you're paying attention to them or not, because we are upright walking beings, and you're going to go skiing, you're going to go mountain biking, you're going to hiking, whatever. Let's just establish some general understanding of what you're doing, how to control for where you want to go, and then using that as kind of like the baseline to build off of. And then skiing, just, it sounds like, happens to be something that might just be an end goal for somebody, but really the focus is on the education side, on the front end of that, and preparing them for, maybe they only ski 1 week and then they spend the rest of their time hiking or surfing or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And really realizing that if you give the body enough experiences and a bit of knowledge about it, that you can actually kind of, like, in a way, set and forget it.
Yeah.
Like, I have a friend who, he's younger than me and he's a much better surfer than me, but every time when he has to go surfing, he has to get up early, do half an hour of stretching, all this sort of stuff. I just get my board out of the car, walk into the water and paddle in. And by the time I've caught a couple of waves, I'm fine. But I think if you counted the hours in a day, I'm conscious of where pressure is under my foot, what my arms are doing, what my head is doing as I'm chatting to Abe on the podcast, like how I'm sitting,
Right.
like that all accumulates to me paying attention, just like, me paying attention to my finances and going, whoops, I'm, if you don't pay attention, things are going to get out of control. If you pay attention, now you don't have to set aside like an hour when you could be skiing or surfing or whatever. It's already done in the like little gaps throughout the day. So that's my philosophy, because again, like, everyone works on what it works for them. That's been working for me. And I just see people, I'm like, why is my young friend better surfer? Like, why is he stretching? Like, I don't stretch anymore. But it's sort of, it's because I think I'm just paying attention to my body, like, probably 5 hours more every day. So in a year, it's like so huge how much time I guess I've invested listening and pay attention to my body.
There's so many things. It's funny, like, as we're sitting here, if I pull this drawer open, I have like toe separators in here. There's like extension for my fingers, just because I'll sit here and, like, I know deep down that sitting on Zoom is the death of my posture. And so I will constantly be, if I have 5 minutes between a session, I'll get up and I'll lay down on the ground in like a cobra and I'll just release my hip flexors. Or if I'm sitting here for an hour, I'll put toe separators in to combat being in ski boots the rest of the season or whatever it may be. And it comes from a knowledge of this stuff because what I do for a profession. But I think you're really onto something with like finding a way to get that knowledge that maybe historically has been reserved for people in our professions and then brought to a more public setting. And I think that's where something like your business model or the Ski Systems business model is special, because we're both able to connect with individuals that might not have access to a high-end facility like yours, or maybe they're in a more rural area and they don't have a full gym setup or something like that. And these models, now that people are more open to them because of the pandemic and just generally being more accepted to do virtual stuff, are going, hey, I have, a dumbbell and a chair in my garage. I can get on big picture skiing or the ski system, and here's some applicable things that I can do every single day for myself with some guidance to just better understand how to stand or how to move. And then when the season comes around, if skiing happens to be your passion, which I'm sure people listening to this, it is, your body just gets it a little bit more. And when that's happening, your risk for things to go wrong is not eliminated, but it is reduced. And then because of that, your opportunity to have more fun and enjoyment is maximized, because if you're not spending time messed up, you're having like a better time. So it's really cool to hear that.
Yeah. I just like, I keep calling like a lot of the body stuff on my site like awareness. There's always that word awareness in there. And I think once you start doing that, it's been really cool, because I get feedback from clients saying, yeah, my wife the other day was telling me to stop moving around. Like, he's like this 55-year-old guy, they're talking with friends or something, and he's there doing like some balance foot things, or he's like, playing with his shoulder blades. And so that, it's like, tick, job done, because now he's doing it when he's bored. He's like, hang on, what's my body doing? And interested in that. Like, my wife is constantly saying like, oh, I'm just embarrassed. Like, she's used to it now, but at the airport, why are you doing that now, Tom? Why are you moving around? It's like, well, this airport's boring as anything. Like, I may as well do something useful with my time. And it's funny because now it's filtered into Archie, my son, and he's like, yeah, just always moving. And it's so funny how they copy. Like, he'll say, Dad, look at this exercise I'm doing. This is for strengthening this and bouncing. This is a good one, isn't it? And yes, so it's cool. Like, I'm really excited to see, like, I wonder what influence I'll have on someone that I'm not trying to make him do that, but he's watching me as my job and also as a person, always like on the trampoline playing with things. And so that'll be, what's
they're
that?
The kids are they're so impressionable. Like, they're such little sponges. And I think sometimes to their detriment, like in a lot of situations, I think that the parent, this is a complete sidebar, but the parents aren't setting a good enough example, not realizing the effect to which they are impacting the kid. Even when, like you said, you're not even directly doing something. They're just picking up, like, I'm just watching what dad does. I'm watching how he moves. How dad ties his shoes like this. I want to tie my shoes like that. It's not like you sat down and said, hey, we're both going to tie our shoes like this. Okay. It's just, it's wild to me. Oh, go ahead.
Have you come across this guy, Thibodeau?
Thibodeau?
Yeah.
Christian Thibodeau?
Yes.
Like the old school Testosterone Nation writer, bald guy.
Is he got dark skin?
Maybe. There's this
Maybe
guy.
It's anyway.
Here, while you search it, there's a guy named Christian Thibodeau, who is a Canadian, I believe, but he was a writer for Testosterone Nation, which is this like super archaic bodybuilding. I mean, you want to go find some crazy workouts from like the 80s. They're just on there in these wild forums where people comment on their experiences, but he wrote for them for a while. And I think that I think it must be the guy you're talking about, because he has a kid, and I think he puts up videos of his kid doing like overhead squats and stuff like that. Must be him, right?
Yep, that's him. Anyway, I listened to a great podcast, the Just Fly podcast.
Yeah.
This guy Joel, he interviews some really interesting people.
Seidman.
He's in, what's that? Sorry,
Joel Seidman. Is he like a physio? Trains a bunch of athletes?
No, he's like a sprint coach and like an athletics coach.
Yeah.
So he interviews Christian Thibodeau a number of times. And one that really caught my attention, because Archie was maybe, I don't know, 6 months old at this time. He's talking, like, I think one of the titles, was he going to write a book, or he's written a book? It's like, your kid sucks and it's all your fault. Right? And
yes,
I was like, okay, I got to listen to this.
That. Yeah.
And so anyway, he impressed upon me the importance of, like, as soon as they're born, it's your responsibility to give them experiences, and experiences that stimulate balance, texture, color, depth, all the, like, as many different stimulus as possible, temperature, because I'm going to muck this up, but roughly, like, in the first 3 years of your life, and I could be saying too long or too short here, but you've got this window where you basically imprint how that person is going to behave for the rest of their life. And they're almost, like, someone describes it as being like kids are in a hypnotic state. So you can influence them hugely.
Yeah.
So I always have been thinking about that. And he's in a different stage at the moment where it's still sort of hypnotic, but he's almost going to come out soon, maybe like 6, might even be his 5 or something, where basically it's almost done. Like you've got this window. If you haven't done a lot of stuff, then it's going to be hard for them to become a really good athlete later on. And so I've always thought about that. So allowed him to crawl on different textures, a lot of time bare feet, showing him different things. Like I used to balance him on the palm of my hand. Have you ever seen that with?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like, he can't do it now because he's too scared. He knows consequence. Like, that's the brain. It's so cool. Like, now he could do it, but as soon as he could sort of, what was it? He was in Canada. I've got video of him in Canada, and we were there when he just turned 3 months, and he couldn't even stand, but he can stand on the palm of my hand for like 30 seconds, and I'm like bouncing him like a ski pole, and he's just standing there because his reflexes are just so like, that's everyone has reflexes, and when your reflexes work, you don't have to think because they're so much faster. But now, like he said, he saw the video the other day and he said, "Dad, can you do that with me?" And it's like incredibly hard because he's like 18 like, kilos now. So that, but it's funny, like, he wouldn't let, or his reflexes of fear and safety, which have now grown, and he's fallen and hurt himself. He's like, no. And he would.
I mean, think about adults learn. I mean, tying this back to skiing, which is a little of a stretch, but you think about like that. One, the window thing you're talking about, like when you work with a new client, the expectations you set in the first 3 sessions totally dictate the amount of trust, interaction, them showing up on time, repercussions for not showing up on time, yada, 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 is established in those first couple meetings of like, this is how this is going to go, et cetera, et cetera. That's also when they're the most green. They don't know you yet as a coach. They've come to you with a really big why behind their what. They're the most motivated. I would imagine it's similar with ski coaching. Like, that's almost when they're the most impressionable, and they don't know their deviations yet, or their strengths or their weaknesses. And so, not that they won't get better as they go along, but I would imagine you have an opportunity to really present them with like some new concepts or ideas that can really gel with where they're at. Similar to children. I remember when I was at Equinox, we talked a lot about developmental kinesiology and just movement mechanics of children, because they're just like it's like all kids are innocent. They come out just children. They're good. They're not impressed upon by the world yet. They don't have biases, opinions, prejudices, judgments, whatever. They just are experiencing the world as it comes at them. And from a movement standpoint, they're doing the same thing. And then as we get older, we sit in chairs, we drive in cars, we load up on one leg, we sit with our head down, we text on phones. And this perfect mechanical structure of like hips all the way to the ground when you squat, perfect mobility. You can crawl, you can walk, you can roll, you can stand, you can jump. It gets destroyed by the things that we then have to do in our life to move along or whatever. And so we would always be trying to get back to these, like, not just child states from a movement standpoint, but also just a reception point of like, I want to be open to learning, you know?
Yeah. Reception as well, like reception, listening, receiving information, because like, you know, that's a really good point. And I think a lot of people, you know, who have young kids, teenagers now, and they're like, oh yeah, God, it's so frustrating when I see my son like sitting there with bad posture, and you know, this adult themselves is like going to see physios and stuff because they've got a sore back, and they're like, from their point of view, that they can see that the kid is gonna have the same thing go on with them later on in life. But like, to the kid, to the fairness to the kid, when he's doing that at that current state moment, it's not causing any problems, so why should he care? Like, he does that for 5 hours. Does he have a sore back? No. So it's like, you know, so I think that's tricky. And, you know, trying to relate that to maybe skiing, like I think you have to give people situations or you have to give people experiences where they maybe feel consequences more obviously. You know,
how do you control for that in like, I think you have an interesting point here. And it's not to say that you want to create risk for someone, because that would put your job at jeopardy. But when you're working with someone, how do you teach them? Like, how do you teach them to push their envelope safely? Because we all know that our progress, especially in the sport of skiing, because it involves like speed and pitch, your ability to get better increases the more willing you are to put yourself in exponentially more risky situations. And that could even be true on a groomed run, right? If you can get someone to allow their skis to run straighter for longer to carry more speed into a turn and then initiate the turn, how do you teach people that that like comfort gauge there?
Yeah, I think like back to Archie again, my son, I think it's just about creating a progression. Like, we all, if anyone's in the coaching, we all know that, but sometimes I think you might get lost in a moment and forget it. Because if you take the small steps, like this increased speed in skiing, or tackling a, you know, like a more bumpy run, like how can you break it down into smaller and smaller bits? Because there's that you know, that zone where there's enough stimulus that it's exciting, but it's not too much that it's scary. So you trigger the reflexes, like Archie balancing on my hand, like no, this is too. So for that example, if I found a way, like maybe it's with my hand like a centimeter off the ground, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Right. So it's like, instead of going back to, well, I used to do him up, hold him like 5 feet off the ground, going back to that. So I think it's creating these progressions. And again, like what I've learned from the physical therapy world is don't assume that you've got this one progression that worked like all 2020. Everyone was just getting great results from it. 2021 comes around, and you do the same progression, and suddenly you're not seeing it. I think it's just because it's a sign you're not paying attention to the individual again, and finding out like, wow, does this progression need to be brought back even easier?
I remember, I mean, we even like, as I can't express enough the importance of like drilling, you know, like when you're really trying to get better at something. I can speak to this in, I train jujitsu, and one of the most important parts is to just run through the absolute most basic, super unsexy, boring stuff where you're just body position. And the same with skiing. When I was growing up, the amount of time when we were skiing a high level, like almost World Cup level, that we would spend doing like stem Christies down a run, where you're just like, you're doing a snowplow, lift up your inside ski, move. Or we do like advanced versions where you have, we would do this one a lot, where you lift up one ski and it drives over the other one.
Javelin turn.
Yeah, you're only on one, and you just apply brute pressure and it moves you across. you switch, apply brute pressure, moves you across. And we would go one by one down the hill. And when you get to the bottom, you look up and you watch every single other athlete go. And I couldn't quantify how many thousands of times that I've done these drills. But now at 32, I get back on snow. I don't think about that. I just think about the elements, like, hey, what's that person doing 80 feet in front of me? How fast am I going? Are there uncovered rocks? Do we have enough snow to be safe? Is there, you get to think about these environmental factors that are impacting your skiing. Whereas I think when you're starting, the concern is so much on your own skill. And that's why we see a lot of accidents, because people are worried about just what they're doing, or they're not looking through their turn, they're looking at their feet, kind of thing. And so it's crazy, these evolutions.
I think that's I've been trying to think over the last few weeks, funnily enough, like how, like not calling something drills or exercises. Like I like the word experience, like experience training, because again, that's how we learn, by being given experiences. Like Archie swimming, like what's an experience of his legs floating, sinking. Like drills, the same thing. They just hone in on a particular sensation or part of the experience. Right. And you just need a certain amount, like we all know, you just need a certain amount of hours experiencing something before it becomes autonomous. Because I think it's would you agree it's a hot topic at the moment, like with coaching, cueing, like internal cues versus external cues. Like Nick Winkelman is really bringing that to the forefront of a lot of trainers around the world, which is awesome.
Yep.
And like, I think some people are like, we all want to jump on like the silver bullet, like, oh, right, external cues just work way better all the time. I'll only use external cues because all the research points to that being like better. But to your point, as an athlete, I think there's still benefit by honing in, really being kind of internal, feeling what's going on, building up the hours of experience of that until the experience is really owned by you, and then adding like external cues and along to the experience. So you're starting to take in other information, interpret it, and then build a library of, oh, do this happens. Oh, right. This is caused from this position, like the javelin turn position. Wow, I do that, I get a lot of pressure on the edge and it shoots me across the hill. Cool. Bank that in my head.
I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier, that it's not like a one size fits all thing. You take a client comes in and you truly need to listen to what they are saying in the moment about what they are going through, because as a coach, like the longer you coach, if you're passionate about it and it's what you really are actually invested in doing, you are going to constantly try to acquire as much information to be able to properly handle a situation when it arises. And when you deal with, whether it's a new ski client or a new training client, if you really, truly listen to that intake process, you'll develop an understanding of what percentage of like internal or external cues need to be applied to that individual. Because some people are very visual, some people are entirely auditory when they're learning. So you don't really have a way to accurately screen someone's like motor control process to a T, or how they process information internally. But as you're going through that experience with them in the beginning, maybe they're really responsive to just experiential things. And you can talk to them about the feel of this or the feel of that based on X, Y, and Z. And then maybe they are very responsive to like, okay, we're going to physically move your boot in this position. How does that feel now? Or they respond differently to different cues, but each of those people will be so different. I guess that's actually an interesting question, because to the business model, right, it can't be as individualized as I come to you, Tom, as a potential client, right? You put me through a screening process, you sit down with me, ask me about my exercise history, my lifestyle habits, et cetera, and then we kind of come up with this plan. So how do you provide those valuable experiences and the right cues to someone where you don't get that same intake process?
Yeah, well, I think that's why I actually like the subscription model, because it's just like school. If you were 6 years old and you go, right, okay, actually there's no such thing as school. What do I do to actually get on in this world? Maybe I'll just hire a maths teacher for a couple of hours, maybe 1 hour a week, just for maybe 3 months, and then be done with it. No. You kind of like need to be in it. Like you go to school for years. So
Yeah.
I like the subscription model, both for me and clients, because it allows for a longer journey to almost start. They can start almost anywhere, like in the process, because I know as I like get comments on videos or get emails, I'll hear from what people are missing or they don't understand. And so then I'll create content that fills that need, and then it keeps going. So it's an evolving, more organic type thing, instead of like, here's a program, I've created it, it's this long, and then you do it and it's done.
Right.
It's like, it should actually be, well, and that's done. Now I need to find out where you're at and then do the next thing. So yeah, does that answer that question?
Yeah. I think also,
I think that's a much better way. Like you got to invest, think about investing like a lot more time. And when you do that, then it also like takes some pressure off, because you're not going, oh, wow, okay, I've got to get ready for just like this upcoming season. It's like, you know what, for the rest of my life, I want to ski really well, keep getting better, keep enjoying it, and at the same time learn about my body. Well, it's not that, like 300 $300 a year, and like it's less than $1 a day.
I couldn't agree more. I think, and I'm partial to this because my entire life I've been extremely active, and I know the value that preparing like the most important thing for me is this concept of ever ready preparedness. I just want, if you were in California tomorrow and you said, hey, I want to go surf, I don't want any part of me to say no because blank. Like, oh, I'd love to go, but my shoulder, or I'd love to go, but my back's acting. It's going to take me 30 minutes to warm up. Are you okay waiting for me? I just want the answer 100% from now to the day I'm in the dirt to be yes, absolutely. Where can I meet you? When do you want me there? Like, because I'm constantly in a state of preparing my body and listening to it forever. Because ultimately, it doesn't mean that every single person out there listening or just in general should get on some insane out of their head workout program that's above where they're at and just get super strong. That's not for everybody. It may be something that you enjoy and it can be an aspect of your training, but the real end goal here is establish baseline movement patterns and strengthen yourself through those so that you can just do life things better, so that your body's not at risk of being injured from little things. How many people do you know took a weird step and threw their back out, or they went to reach for something in a cupboard and they like hurt their I know so many stories like this, and it's so frustrating because though of course there's acute situations. So outside of that, a lot of these they're preventable from baseline movement. And the subscription model is so cool because someone, like you said, for $300, like you can't get a monthly gym membership in the US for less than $230. But for an entire year, you're able to have access to really high level thought out to a degree that the average consumer won't understand, because they can't get into your brain and understand the years that you've put into this to bring it to the point where it is now deliverable, and as people experience that and understand it, I hope that these models will just continue to grow and reach more and more people, because everyone's going to be stoked once they're on them.
It puts the responsibility on the provider as well to keep evolving and keep producing. Like, as soon as Netflix doesn't make new stuff, I'm canceling. But they keep making good stuff, so I keep watching and enjoying, like in my free time, having some cool shows. A new season of something comes along, awesome. It's just it's the same sort of thing. So I think that's why I think model actually works really well for both parties. And I think some people are scared because it's like, oh, but they're auto charging and like, but I think if you find the right one, like for me, it motivates me every day to think, right, what's missing? What are people confused about now? Like I'm looking at some older videos now and going, cool, it's time. I've really clarified my thoughts on that much better. Like 15 months on, I'm going to redo like talking about levers in the body, because I think I can teach it more simply. How I was taught before is a little bit more like the same at school, which is like, yeah, okay, I'm listening, but maybe how does that apply? Like, right, to the cells in my body thing. I don't really care what all these different cells do. Like, how does it affect my daily life so I can live my life better? So I want to, that keeps me going, great, I'm going to update that. Whereas if people just buy it once, it's sort of, set and forget.
I don't know if you experienced this, but I know like when I was developing the ski system, I had all these ideas in my head of how it was going to be. Of course, like you kind of think through your concepts, your deliverables of this will go this way in people's hands. And then you release something and it's just understood completely differently than what you intended. And then the feedback that you get, you're like, oh my God, like I feel inclined to fix this as soon as possible. And at the beginning, you want to fix every single thing that comes your way because you're invested, it's your own thing. But you realize you don't have the resources or the time to do that. And so you almost have to prioritize like an order of things that need to be fixed in order for everything to continue to move smoothly and deliver the quality of service to like the customers that you have. Because you're constantly evolving your platform, correct?
Yeah. And again, that's why I think the subscription model is good, because when I realized the day that it's like, also to your point about, that video didn't come across right, like it gives you this freedom to go, oh, that's fine, because I can just do it again, because these people are here, like they're going to next month, I can explain it better. And I think there's always, like, everything's in balance. Like you put out a video and someone loves it, and then it confuses them to no end. And so, like I think Tim Ferriss, when he talks about when he schedules all his podcast interviews, he knows his audience, and each time he's trying to hit like 10% of the different kind of, part of his audience really likes listening to about the body stuff. Some like about finance, some like about food. Right. And so each time, like, he might not hit every single person. And if you try and do that, you probably won't ever, you'll go crazy. Right. But if you're okay with just like, okay, I don't have to, please everyone with this next one, but it's going to help that, that 10%, 15% who really need to hear it.
It's also interesting with the subscription model because I'm a consumer of a bunch of different subscription models. Netflix is a great example, right? Like you want to watch something on TV, you pay $14.99 a month, you get Netflix. To your point, if they didn't make content next Friday, I'm canceling immediately.
Yeah.
But I think so if I'm a consumer and I'm considering like joining a gym or using a subscription model, or maybe a combination of both. I have a gym membership, but I want the subscription model to give me guidance and structure within my workouts. As consumers of subscription models, we're actually in a better position because as a business owner, you're incentivized to continue to produce good things for me. So maybe you're paying $40 a month for a subscription, and that price in and of itself is like coming out of your bank account might be frustrating. But then when you actually realize what you're getting on the other side of it, it will not function if the person behind the paywall isn't really invested in continually producing better, more refined, more thought out, productive stuff. So you're almost getting like, especially if the cost of the subscription goes up in the future for any model and you're able to get in on an earlier price point, is you're almost investing in knowing that you're going to continue to get better and better and better products as the future unrolls. And that's a really exciting part about it, because I think once you're inside of that, it's fun to see new things come your way.
Yeah, and I think it's not for everyone, and that's the other good thing about a subscription model. You can try it for a month. I mean, most people like have a free trial. You can try it, and like there's a good amount of people that just go, you know what, like good on you for doing this, Tom, but it's not for me.
Right.
Like teenagers probably going to find I talk too much.
Right.
But like people with an engineering mind.
Yep.
And that's the thing, they love it. So I think that's also a good thing to consider. It's like, you want to test it out and see if it is up your alley, and whether it's worth doing. Because that was going to be my point. I remember hearing from a really successful entrepreneur that investing in knowledge it always pays off like way more than what you invest. And at times, like, because I've got a subscription of something that's like $130 a month, which, so that's a lot of money over a year. But the person that I get information from there, I see as like increasing my ability to create more value for my people, like way more than what that however, a few $1,000 a year costs me. So I think as long as you see it and you go, oh yeah, well, this information is information I don't have, and I need it. Knowledge, best thing you can invest in, like.
And that's not even to say though, I mean, we talked briefly before the podcast. Actually, I think you mentioned on here too about how you're reaching this point where big picture skiing is really commanding your attention. It's commanding more of your energy, your resource, your time. And so the PT side of things is starting to, for great reason, move aside a little bit. If you look back at all the times that you invested in more knowledge, you wouldn't really be able to forecast along the way that there would be a point at which that knowledge that you gained would provide you with the ability to step away from what you were doing. So it
Absolutely.
could be $200 a month, and you would go today, you would go back and you would pay $500 a month every single month for all of the months to get where you were.
One, like.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you can only connect the dots going backwards, but that's a really important point, is that the value of knowledge across any platform it is invaluable. I know that you got to jump here in a second. So the last thing that I wanted to ask you about was how you see like integrations, and this I guess is more like ski industry specific with, I know that you work with Carv, for example, but how do you see the world of basically like wearable technology or usable technology coming into the world of skiing and improving people's ability, kind of like we've seen in the training industry, where you have like Whoop bands and Apple Watches and wearable tech really starting to change people's habits and behaviors around fitness and activity. What does that next couple of years look like to you?
Yeah, I think it's only going to increase. And you know what? I think it's just all that technology just shines a light on awareness. Like an Apple Watch tells you your heart rate, but you don't need it. If you paid attention, you could notice when your heart rate's rising and you're getting stressed. Right. And even like heart rate variability is a big thing now with athletes. Like you can find out all that stuff without technology, and like Carv, these insoles that read pressure and all these different metrics. You can now look at a moment in time and put your awareness on, oh wow, I had no idea that I was doing this with my inside foot, that I was really on this part of my foot, or the pressure was late. It's so awesome because it just points your awareness at stuff that you're not aware about. And this whole conversation I've kept saying like that, I think is the key. So technology is amazing because it can draw your attention to, hey, check this out. You got no idea you're doing this. Why don't you pay attention to it and see what happens when you do and change it? And
right.
Yeah.
That was,
So I
we
mean,
would
like,
always talk about the whoops and stuff, is like, maybe they're not 100% accurate, but it's not the accuracy that you're looking for. It's the driver of the behavior. So if you
yeah,
realize that you don't get enough sleep multiple nights in a row, and that it's in your best interest to figure out how to sleep more, and then all of a sudden now you do, it's not that whoop was exactly down to the minute of how much sleep you had, but now it has impacted your behavior. If you use a Carv pad and you find out that you're really in your heels through your turns numerically, and then from whatever efforts you learn how to be slightly more in your toe box, now the outcome that you've been after is achieved, whether or not Carv produced a 100% accurate metric on pressure distribution.
yep, yeah.
So,
It's super cool. And at the moment, we're working on, because I do some consulting for them. We're working on the tip. So Carv will give you a tip based on, like, of all the different skills, so like edging, balance, pressure, all those sorts of things. We're having to now put a number of like importance. So if you go down the run and you're a beginner and your edge angle is really low, you're really flat ski, you're skidding a lot, like, is that more important to tell you about, or is how much pressure is on your outside foot? So last night I'm there with a data scientist going, and we're going, wow, we are really messing with people's lives, because if we say it's important to listen to this, and then Carv tells you, hey, your outside ski pressure is really low, try put more pressure on your outside foot, like by lifting your inside one. And actually at that level, it's more about edging. Right. I've just steered you like off
in the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction. So like, it's really, now we've got to put the human side into, like, you've got this data, where do we point you to,
right?
Like, listening to, and that's really what the brain is also doing all the time. Like, we're sitting in chairs, but like a lot of the time we're not even really cognizant of the pressure on my bum and on my back from the chair, yet it's there. Lights are shining in my eyes, there's cars on the road. Like, sometimes I get drawn to listen to that when it's a bit louder.
Yep.
But like, what's important, like, it's really interesting with the technology, Carv, like, where do we point people to? And then after we point them there, what do we tell them to try and like change that behavior?
I mean, that's a tough one too, with something as complex. I mean, it took 15 years to learn how to really control my edges on snow, and how to actually, like, if I'm going down a run and anticipating a change in environment, like ice sheets or going into powder, out of powder, I can make those decisions. But how do you cue someone remotely to like create a greater edge angle? Because this is a perfect full circle wrap. Like, that is back to that crux of like training, is you can't make that too complex, because it's a really high level concept that has to be delivered in like a, like that. I mean, that's a tough one.
You're just skiing, you're a beginner, or you're an advanced person, you're at this resort, it's snowing, you're cold, you're warm, your boots are tight, they're not, there's all this information. And then Carv can tell you like some other stuff, like, where do you put your attention? Like, that's really gonna like change, like that's what will change your behavior about what you do do next. Yeah, it's super interesting. So I think, and what's cool, obviously, like, data now is like the thing, right? Like, people that have data on stuff have a lot of value. So like, Carv is collecting data on how skiers behave at different levels, what they do wrong. So as more and more comes in, and then this season we implement this new weighting of, actually, beginners are going to get told more about edging than outside. We're weighting that more important than outside ski pressure. We'll know then, like, what changes. Like, do we see beginners jump up to the next level faster than in 2020? Right. And it's pretty amazing. Like, I just think, and the company, I mean, it's full of a lot of young, really interesting, cool, forward-thinking people that are not bound by teaching and thinking about skiing in the normal ways, they're really like, what can we do different? And like the guy who created it, Jamie, that was his thing all along. Like, how can you make learning skiing like a more fluid process on the go? And yeah, so it's just pointing awareness at things. We're now just working on where of all the different data, where do we point you?
If I was like, these are things that I would have loved to have had when I was competing, because I am such a nerd for these types of metrics, of knowing this kind of stuff, or force production, things like that. And I'm now thinking out loud of how this could impact someone like a mogul skier, where a lot of times the cueing when you got done with a mogul run was, you're not driving your basket more. Go back, do it again, drive your basket more, keep your eyes up. But what if it could be even more direct than that, and something along the lines of like, okay, we know that, I picture coaches in a room together with Carv data up on a flat screen, and they're like, okay, well, when Tom sleeps 8 hours a night, he produces an edge angle of blah, blah, blah. So, and coming up with, producing some sort of goals, individual, because that's what data does. It gives us individual approaches to that specific person. So instead of telling 50 athletes all to prep their pole basket better, you can now isolate them into groups of 5 and say, okay, you guys actually need to focus on this about your skiing. You guys and girls need to focus on this about your skiing. And with more,
like, what if they're not prepping their pole basket because where their balance is under their foot is not visible from the outside as much, but the pressure data is saying you roll on your heel. So no wonder you're not prepping, because you don't feel balanced to move. You know what I mean? Like,
and so it'll be really cool to see all of these are, you get more people on the product, then you get more numbers, and with more numbers, you can make more inferences. So it's going to be cool to see. It's your second season, right? Fully.
Oh no, Carv have been going for a little bit longer, but it's now I've been working like with them, like helping write the tips and helping the data scientists and other people like work out what's more important at what level, and that's now 2 years. Yeah, second season of being involved with that, and it's just cool reflecting, like, because last night we're doing this. And we did the same kind of process like 12 months ago. And it's just much easier this time because you kind of understand the process. You also understand, maybe because you've got data on what the effect was, so you can be more accurate. So even next year, like, and they've got this really cool thing called video mode. So you can also basically tie all the data, like what pressure's doing at an exact moment with video. Where your foot pressure is, like you can freeze frame and you can go, where's the pressure under someone's outside foot? So for me, that was the hook when I tried it in New Zealand, like 5 years ago. I saw on my left foot freeze framed that instead of pressuring the ball of my foot at the moment that I wanted ball of foot pressure, I actually had more pressure under the big toe itself, like the end of my big toe.
So you were like,
and the ball of my foot had
up at the toe.
What's that? Sorry?
You were like loaded more forward than you wanted to be more centered in the underneath.
Yeah. And like, or the way, I guess it's the way I was forward. I was actually too far forward because I'm using my big toe to kind of stop me instead of like the pressure being under the ball of the foot. And I know like ball of the foot, because I'm using my arch, is stronger. That's where I want it to be. And my right foot was all ball of the foot pressure, a lot less kind of pressure in the heat map showing up under the big toe. And I was like, I kind of had an inkling of this, but I didn't really know. With this, I can see exactly what's going on. And so that was like, this is cool, because now I'm aware of it. I didn't have enough awareness of when you're going like 60 Ks an hour, doing like a turn, laying your hip over, putting your brain in your big toe kind of probably make you stack it. You're just thinking about balancing.
And that goes back to the high level part of it, because if you're the average person trying to get better, there are certain metrics and things that you can pay attention to. And like you said, you guys are working on these recommendations and suggestions. But now let's talk about an Olympic athlete who's looking for microseconds of difference between them and a podium spot, for example. And you can get them to start being mindful of things like that, toe box pressure, which when you compete, those things do matter. Athletes think about that kind of stuff. They are thinking about the really, really like small minutia of what's going on. And if a product like this makes a change like that, and then someone ends up on a podium that they wouldn't have been on, I mean, that's really, really special. That's changing the game. And that's only one sport. There's so many disciplines within winter sports. You have cross country skiing. I can imagine the same for ski jumping, right? Like these guys come down in a tuck on the in run. Some of them might be pitched one way or the other and they don't know. And that's changing their trajectory in the air. And then they're coming up a couple of meters short than they could if they really knew where they were at. Like, and snowboarding too. I mean, that's a whole nother distribution of weight and edge control. So it's going to be really cool to see how that grows. I came across it last year. It must have been targeted for some ad, and I was looking at it and I was like, that's actually a really interesting, I didn't know how I felt about it, but I was like, that's a really interesting product, because I remember when I was younger, I would go get custom footbeds and I would get heat molding to the boot liner and go to through all these steps so that I could have changes in my footbed pressure. But the problem was I didn't know how much more or less I was getting as a result of doing all the efforts. So it would be cool to have that. But Tom, I will be respectful of your time here. I could honestly just talk to you for 6 hours. I mean, this could keep going on, which is great because it means there's more stuff that we can talk about in the future. But just kind of shameless plug, like where can people find you? How can they reach out to you, get in touch with you, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me on the podcast show.
Of course.
Like, would mirror that, say it's the time's flown. So thank you. If people want to find out more, the first place I would say is bigpictureskiing.com. So that's where I put, all my like really well thought out content. And yes, it is behind a subscription, but I really think it's worthwhile and you can check it out. There's a free trial to check it out. Now, YouTube, ages ago, I started putting a bunch of stuff up there and that's grown. And so I put free stuff there, and that's just Tom Gellie, Big Picture Skiing. So people can find me there. Big Picture Skiing on Instagram. I try not to do too many like posts that are not like, I always try and put value in posts there. So I think, that's a good place to start and find out like what can you learn from Tom. And then, Facebook, Big Picture Skiing. I've got a podcast, the Big Picture Skiing podcast. So all different places. But yeah, just see if it's maybe something that works for you. And if not, then great. No worries.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure that we'll do this again in the future. There's too much to talk about and check in on. So from Australia,
I hope we just actually get to ski.
I
want to come to Colorado.
Well, I'm in California now. I'm in Southern California. Okay. Yeah, but going to try to do a couple of weeks up in Mammoth this year and maybe try to get to British Columbia again. But yeah, man, I am all about it. I want to ski so bad. It would be great to ski with like-minded people, of course. It's always better.
British Columbia?
I've been to Revelstoke, and my mom lives outside of Vancouver. So cool. Revelstoke was a trip, and we did a heli trip up there 2 separate times, and that was like some of the most amazing, life-changing skiing I've ever experienced.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I would love to get back up there. So
that's because we maybe my little family might be going to Sun Peaks.
Oh,
the
cool.
Government in Australia is finally looking like they might open up international travel, and so if that's not too crazy, and I think we're going to try and go to Sun Peaks in British Columbia.
Nice.
This winter for a month. So yeah.
Well, wherever you go, perhaps we'll be able to ski together.
That's it.
All right, Tom.
Thanks
Thank you
a lot,
so much, brother. Yep.